Well, hello everyone, my name is Zwiggojr and welcome back to another video, and this week I have something very special for you guys. If you've looked around YouTube for the past couple of months, you might have seen these videos pop up of 100 days of hardcore some kind of game, and I thought to myself, how can I implement this into Pokemon? And since in Pokemon we don't technically have in-game days, you only have real days, I decided to do 100 hours of Pokemon Emerald, my favorite game of all time. But just doing 100 hours would be kind of pointless, so I decided to set a couple of milestones for myself to try and get in these 100 hours. And here they are. I have to get one Pokemon to level 100 in 100 hours, which should be pretty possible. We also need to be able to complete the league. We also need to fight Steven Stone and beat him. I want to get one gold symbol in the Battle Frontier. I want to find one shiny Pokemon, and last but not least, I want to complete the entire National Dex. Now, how am I supposed to do that when I'm just playing Pokemon Emerald? Well, we're going to be playing a ROM hack of Pokemon Emerald called Pokemon National Dex Emerald, where every single Pokemon will be available to me in the game, so I don't have to do any trading. In this ROM hack, there have been a couple of changes, one including the major battles. All teams have been made a little bit better, but also the Pokemon locations have been changed so you can get every single one of them. Before we jump into the video, let me know if you think that I'm going to fail any of the challenges that I've set for myself in this video, and also if you would like me to do this again in the future, leave some challenges down below I can do in a different game. Let's also try to smash 100 likes for the 100 in-game hours that I'll be playing in this game. And with all of that out of the way, let's jump right into my 100 hours of Pokemon Emerald. I don't really have to explain why I named my character 100 hours, I think, and we immediately jump into the world of Hoenn, I guess. We immediately go to our room and set the time right, because from here and now on, the challenge will be starting. The first thing we have to do is something very important, and that's pick our starter. I'm going with Mudkip on this one because he will probably be the Pokemon that I grind up all the way to level 100, because he's of course my channel mascot. After picking him up and naming him after myself, I then save the professor from the Zigzagoon, go ahead and take on May, and I also take her out rather quickly. We then go back to the professor's lab and pick up our 5 Pokeballs, so that means that we can finally start one of our challenges, try to complete the National Dex. So I'll be capturing every single Pokemon that I haven't captured yet. And so that I have even more chances of capturing Pokemon, I make a stop by the first Pokemon I find to buy even more Pokeballs. With all of these Pokeballs, I decide to go and scour the routes for Pokemon that I haven't captured yet. I'm not going to be showing every single Pokemon that I capture, because that would literally take hours. But on the first 3 routes, I captured sort of all of the kind of starter type Pokemon like Sentret, Zigzagoon, Wurmples, all of those good boys. After I'm done capturing most of the things that I could find, I decided to craft a team of really weak Pokemon until I ran into a Wooper, who's of course the nemesis of my starter Pokemon Mudkip. Normally I would beat him up, but this time we have to add him to the Pokedex. After making our way through Petalburg Woods and beating up Team Aqua with our Caterpie, we then have our first couple of evolutions, evolving our Silcoon into a Beautifly and Weedle into Kakuna. I then once again went through all of the routes, captured all the Pokemon that I could find, and went to Roxanne, and at 6 hours and 12 minutes I managed to reach her, which is quite a long time. Don't think I've ever had to do 6 hours just to get to the first gym, but I also have a Pokedex total of 38. Luckily, since we have an abundance of Pokemon, we have water types, we have grass types, to easily take on Roxanne and take her out, together with Bellsprout and our favorite boy, Mudkip. We get our first gym badge, and after the battle, my Mudkip immediately evolves into Marshtomp, so that's another Pokemon added to the Dex total. After taking out the same grunt we took out before, we then save Pico, go back to the president's office, and later on he will give us a very important item after we deliver this letter to Steven, and that's the EXP share, which is just going to be very useful for all the Pokemon that we have to grind up in order for them to evolve. We then find out that May is in the area, so we go ahead and beat her up, even though this is kind of an optional battle. And I probably should not have done it to save myself some time, but I was pretty clueless at this point. I didn't really have anything planned out. After winning against her, we go back to Mr. Briny's house and sail to Dewford Town, where we pick up the fishing rod and do our first couple of fishing encounters, capturing the Lord of all Pokemon, Magikarp, and after doing so, we go back to the Granite Cave and pick up all of the Pokemon that we can capture over there as well, including Zubat, Sableye, Mawile, Aron, and a bunch more. We then deliver the letter to Steven, which means that we can pick up the EXP share back at the president's office, and after evolving our Abra into a Kadabra, we actually had the easiest gym battle yet. We could just confusion his entire team and easily take the win. But since we now have Kadabra, I can also explain another question that I had on my mind. How are we going to evolve trade Pokemon? As it turns out, in this game, all of the trade Pokemon evolve via friendship. So once they love you enough, they will evolve into their final form, so no trading required. We then go to the museum to stop Team Aqua once again and get their Thief TM, so now we can steal ourselves some more time. Also, never really noticed, but apparently Archie says simps in this game. We then go to the next point of interest, and that is the May battle, and we reached that at a time of 10 hours and 34 minutes with a Pokedex total of 57. Luckily for us, we're not here to actually review the battles. We just take out May and go to the next stop, and that's the bike shop, because we actually are going to be needing the bike to get some encounters later on in the Safari Zone. Before we take on Watson though, I did a couple more evolutions and decided to craft a team that would easily take out the electric type gym leader. With a Pokedex total of 62 in a time of 12 hours and 36 minutes, I managed to reach him as well. With a couple of ground type Pokemon, we could easily take out all of his electric types. Actually, mainly just used Wooper and Marshtomp to completely disintegrate his team. Our Wooper also evolved into a Quagsire after this gym battle, which means that we're never going to have to use this imposter again. We then went through Mount Chimney to capture even more Pokemon in the cave over there, and we find fire types, poison types, anything that we may need for any upcoming gym battles. We also evolved our Seedot into a Nuzleaf, and I was thinking, how am I ever going to get all of the evolution stones? Because there aren't going to be as many laying out on the ground to evolve everything that I need. Well, apparently, once you reach the Battle Frontier, there is a shop there that sells all of the stones required, so eventually we will be able to evolve all of the stone evolutions. We then went to play Fisherman some more, and we actually found a Feebas that's not in the regular spot, which I was a little bit sad about because I kind of was excited to go on a Feebas hunt. After capturing this Feebas, I went back to my boxes and I decided to order them a little bit. With boxes that only had Pokemon that evolved regularly, boxes with Pokemon that evolved via stones, and then boxes with Pokemon that are already fully evolved. After reaching Meteor Falls and once again meeting up with Archie, we managed to find ourselves a Moonstone and evolve our Nidorina into our Nidoqueen, and that's our first stone evolution done. We then reached the top of Mount Chimney at a time of 16 hours 29 minutes with a Pokedex total of 95, so I would say we're doing pretty good right now. Still haven't found a shiny though, and nothing has been crossed off the list yet. The battle with Maxie was pretty easy though, since we just took out his first two Pokemon with my Kadabra Psybeams and the final Pokemon Aron with a Marshtomp. This allows me to scale down the mountain to Lavaridge Town, capture a couple more Pokemon before I reach said town. Not too long later, we also reach Flannery at a Pokedex total of 98 and a time of 17 hours 47 minutes. We didn't really need anything for this fight, we just needed Marshtomp and Kadabra once again to take out all of our Fire-type Pokemon, and when the battle was done, our Zubat also evolved into Golbat. Normally, we would just take on the next gen leader Norman right now, but since we need a couple more captures down at the desert, I first go to the Mirage Tower and pick up the Root Fossil. We will be able to pick up the other fossil after we have completed the league though. After finding everything I could down at the desert, I went back to the Fiery Path to grind up a lot more of my Pokemon. And here I actually found out about the friendship thing because my Kadabra evolved into Alakazam at level 32. We then went to our dad with a time of 25 hours 56 minutes, so we're 1/4 of the way there time-wise, and our Pokedex is looking pretty juicy at 120, about 1/3 of the way through. We then went ahead and challenged our father, and with the help of Crobat, Marshtomp, and Alakazam, we easily managed to overpower his entire team, getting our 5th gym badge, but also the HM for Surf, which unlocks a lot more encounters for us. I first did go to the abandoned ship to pick up the TM for Ice Beam, which will be crucial for taking on Drake down at the Pokemon League eventually. Since we can now access a new area, I decided to fish up a couple of stars, aka all of you guys watching, and after adding those to the Pokedex total, we also go into the tall grass to capture a lot of very special Pokemon, whereunder a Scyther, who also doesn't need to be traded anymore in order to evolve. We then do the most crucial part of this entire run, taking on Team Aqua at the Weather Institute and picking up a very important Pokemon, Castform, because without Castform, we couldn't complete the Pokedex. Something very important then happened. Our Marshtomp finally evolved into Swampert, which means that we should now actually not use him anymore, but because he's the Pokemon that I will be grinding up to level 100, I do decide to use him throughout the rest of the run. And this Swampert alone managed to kill the entirety of May's team, even our Grovyle, who's 4 times super effective, just with a couple of serves. When the battle was over, our Magikarp evolves into a Gyarados. You may wonder why he's level 25, well that's because I just captured a higher level one, so I would have to do less grinding. I did this with a couple of Pokemon actually, and that saved me quite a lot of time. Once again, before we take on the next Gym Leader 1 Nona, I went throughout the entirety of the routes that I hadn't searched yet and found myself some really important Pokemon like Tauros, evolved our Ekans into an Arbok, and did even more evolutions. But there was a little bit of a problem because the footage from Wynona's battle got corrupted. Not that it really mattered though, because we just sweep through her entire team with Swampert, but since we managed to defeat her, we did get access to Mount Pyre to capture a bunch of Ghost-type Pokemon, and also look at Archie, who's being colorblind again. We then do the first trade of this entire run. There is like a couple of trainers in this game that give you Pokemon that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get, and the first of those Pokemon is going to be a Chansey. We then arrive in Lilico City with a Pokedex total of 167 and a time of 37 hours and 28 minutes. So we're almost 4 out of 10 of the way there, which is not really too great since we only have 6 badges, but I think everything will go pretty quickly from now on. This May battle was once again pretty easy, taking down most of her Pokemon with Swampert, but her Sceptile was a little bit difficult because Swampert couldn't take it on, and I needed Alakazam and Doduo's help. Besides that, nothing really that interesting happened, so we went to the Magma hideout. Over here we had a lot more Pokemon that we hadn't seen before, including a Donphan. Even though we already had a Phanpy, that just means that we don't have to grind up that Phanpy anymore. And we then find Maxi at the end of the cave using the blue orb on the red Pokemon, seeing the red Pokemon shooting off into space, and then challenging Maxi to a Pokemon battle. Swampert swamped this entire lava cave with his surfs, which means that Maxi got out of there really quickly. And what's the next big important thing in the storyline? Interrupting an interview. When we finally are done with the interruption of the interview, we go back to the Team Aqua hideout this time, capturing an Electrode there, so we have to once again do less evolutions, and also pick up the old sea map, which is apparently something that you can use at the Lilikov boat station in order to go and capture one of the legendary or mythical Pokemon that normally aren't available. We then go to the Show Cave where we can find an abundance of Ice-type Pokemon like Delibird, Sneasel, Jinx, and a bunch more. I also actually found an entrance to a icy cave in the Show Cave, which I've never ever seen before. And so that just proves if you play 100 hours of your favorite game in a row, you're going to find spaces that you've never seen before. We don't do a lot more besides that. We just go to Mossdeep City and go and take on the next gym leaders, Tate and Liza. As you may have expected though, we just needed Swampert to take down their entire team with Ice Beams and Surfs. They had absolutely no chance. Let's take our 7th gym badge and then go to the Mossdeep Space Center together with Steven to take on Maxi and Tabitha. There are once again absolutely no match for my Swampert Surfs, as they mostly have Fire-type Pokemon. And since we have the champion of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire on our side, I don't think they would have had a chance anyway. After saving NASA and helping Elon Musk getting everything back on track, We then get the HM for a dive from Steven and go to the seafloor cavern to see Kyogre shoot off into space after beating up Archie once again with my starter Pokemon Swampert. And this way the world is actually going to end. So we have to go to the Cave of Origin to meet up with Wallace, the current champion. And he's going to send us to Sky Pillar, but before we go to the top and take on Rayquaza, there's actually a lot of Pokemon in here that I haven't got in my Pokedex yet. So we do a lot of capturing again, getting mostly evolved Pokemon of Pokemon that we have already acquired like Altaria and Banette. And after juicing up our Pokedex a little bit more, we then go to the top, meet up with Rayquaza, he goes and saves the world, so that we have the opportunity to take on the final gym leader, Juan number 1. We do manage to reach him at a time of 45 minutes, which is a lot. We're almost halfway through already and we only have our gym badges done. But we also almost have 200 Pokemon in our Pokedex, which is a very good number, which means that we're over halfway there already. With those milestones out of the way, let's Earthquake the entirety of Juan's team with our little bit of an overleveled Swampert and get our final gym badge pretty easily. You know what that means, we have 8 gym badges acquired, we can finally go and capture our first legendary of the entire run, and that's going to be Rayquaza. We just Ice Beam him a couple of times, make him use Rest, and then lob all of the Ultra Balls that we can at him, because I'm going to be keeping my Master Ball for the roaming Pokemon that I'll be choosing later. The Rayquaza that we just captured is also going to help us by going through the league a lot quicker, because we need to be quick as hell if we want to complete this Pokedex and do all of the other challenges that I've set for myself. Before we get access to the Pokemon League, we first have to beat up Wally at Victory Road, which was pretty easily once again, since we have Swampert on the team. With Ice Beams, Surfs, and Earthquakes, we easily take out his entire team. We also have an opportunity to capture even more Pokemon in Victory Road, including Muk, Exploud, Hitmonlee, and a bunch more. And we then go to Sydney, the first Elite Four member, at an in-game time of 47 hours and a Pokedex total of 205, so we are probably going to be able to complete the Pokemon League in under 50 hours. Swampert was once again the only thing that we needed to take down Sydney, with Ice Beaming his Murkrow, Shiftry, and then Earthquaking his Absol, Houndoom, and Sharpedo. After the battle, our Porygon evolves into a Porygon 2, once again just by leveling him up, no needing to trade. And for the second Elite Four member, I'm actually going to be using Rayquaza because we can easily take out Shedinja with Fly because it has Wonder Guard and I can't really use anything else on it. And the rest of our team, Banette, Sableye, Dusclops, and Gengar all go down by Outrageous from my Rayquaza as well. You know what that means? That means that we can already move on to the next Elite Four member, Glacia. We first destroyed Delibird and Piloswine with Surfs from Swampert, Jinx and Walrein get killed by Earthquakes, and Glalie gets drowned by a Surf. This allows us to go to the final Elite Four member, Drake, and since we have Ice Beam on the team, we can use that on Altaria and Flygon to take them out. We then take out Kingdra with Earthquakes, and the final two Pokemon, Salamence and Dragonite with Ice Beams once again. This gives us our opportunity to go and take on Wallace. And the only thing that we can really do here is just use Earthquake on Golduck. We then also take out Tentacruel and Lantern with Earthquakes. Slowbro definitely took the longest to take down because he's also the bulkiest Pokemon on our team, Earthquaking and Surfing it a couple of times to also take it out, but then he brings in Kingdra, who is able to take an Earthquake very well, take out my Swampert, so I bring in Rayquaza, take it out with Outrage, and his final Pokemon is Omastar, who we once again kill with one more Outrage. This means that we have become champion of the Hoenn region, crossing off one of our challenges on the list. And we actually managed to do this at a time of 47 hours and 32 minutes if we look at our Hall of Fame. Once again, probably the longest I've ever done to complete the Hall of Fame in Pokemon Emerald, but that's because I did a lot of grinding and also had to capture every single Pokemon I didn't have yet. Now, in most of my videos, we would end it off right now, but since we have a lot more to do, there is probably a lot more of the video left. First things first, let's pick the Pokemon that we are going to have to chase after, aka Latios or Latias. I'm going to be picking my favorite one, Latios. Let me know in the comments down below which one you prefer. We then go to the professor's lab, and apparently he upgrades my Pokedex to the National Dex, even though we already have the National Dex because you start off with the National Dex in this game. So I don't really even want to know what he actually did with my Pokedex. Now, there were a couple of things I could have done, but I decided to start off with running through the Pokemon League as many times as I could in order to grind up all of my Pokemon to their appropriate levels so that they would evolve and I would easily fill out my Pokedex that way. It would also allow me to train up my Swampert a lot of levels so that he would reach level 100 quicker, which basically just means that we're doing 2 birds with 1 stone. After evolving all of the Pokemon I had in my PC, which did take quite a while, I eventually was left with a Swampert at level 93. But we're not done yet because there are a lot of Pokemon that we hadn't captured yet. So I went to Lilycove City to use all of my tickets to go and capture mythicals and legendary Pokemon all around Hoenn. Starting off with Mew, who definitely was the easiest to catch. We then took the boat to Naval Rock, where we could capture our beloved Soul Silver and Heart Gold legendaries, Ho-Oh and Lugia. They were definitely not easy to catch, and that might have been my fault because I bought Great Balls instead of Ultra Balls because I'm a moron. But eventually we also managed to add those 2 to the Dex total. I then had another ticket to go and capture Latias, and as you can see, we do this at a time of 57 hours and 45 minutes with a Pokedex total of 228. And this is actually very good because normally you would only be able to get one of the 2 roamers, and here you can find the other one on this special island. After once again lobbing a dozen Great Balls at it, we eventually managed to capture it as well. And there were actually a couple of things I could do now. I could either go and capture more Pokemon so that I could go and run through the league some more to evolve them and add a lot more to the Dex total, or I could go to the Battle Frontier and try to get my gold medal. I actually didn't do any of those 2 things. I went to the boat, got access to Battle Frontier, but didn't go and get my gold medal yet. I first went to the local shop and picked up all of the stones that I needed in order to evolve a lot more Pokemon. Thunderstones, Water Stones, Fire Stones, every stone that we needed was in this shop, so we went ahead, spent all of our hard-earned money on it, and we then went to the box with all of the stone evolutions that we hadn't done yet, and as you can see, there is quite a bit of them. Sunkern into Sunflora, all of the Leaf Stone evolutions were done too. And I actually also evolved my Slowpoke into a Slowking with a Water Stone because apparently in this game they have changed that around so you don't need the King's Rock to evolve it anymore. When all of this was done, there were a couple more Pokemon available at the Battle Frontier, starting off with a big tree that we had to water so that it would turn into a Sudowoodo. And we then went to the Painting Cave where we find a couple of Smeargles, which we also had to add to the Dex total. With these Pokemon out of the way, I decided to go to my favorite destination, my favorite thing to do in the Battle Frontier, and that is the Battle Factory. For the people that don't know what the Battle Factory is, you basically get a choice of some Pokemon that you can rent, and then you use those Pokemon to defeat trainers. Once you defeat 7 trainers in a row, you get a win. And you need to get 7 wins in order to get a gold medal. In this time, you also have to battle the Frontier Brain twice. So instead of just showing you every single battle that I've done in the Battle Factory, I am going to be showing you the 2 battles with the Battle Frontier Brain, whose name, by the way, is Noland. On the first battle with him, we actually got pretty lucky because he didn't really have the best team. As he started off with a Torkoal, and we had the perfect Pokemon in our team, which was a Poliwrath with Belly Drum, Rest, Brick Break, and Hypnosis. So you may expect what I would do here in this situation. I would first put the Torkoal to sleep, then use a Belly Drum, rest up, heal my sleep with a Chesto Berry, and then Brick Break the Torkoal. To one-shot it, we also Brick Break his Kulava to one-shot it, and the final Pokemon is sadly enough a Marshtomp, which we have to take out with another Brick Break. And that's our first win against the Frontier Brain. Now I'll show you the second one. This time we had a team of Breloom, Skarmory, and Vaporeon, and he decided to lead off with a Vileplume. So I immediately swapped in my Skarmory since I knew that Skarmory was easily going to be able to take him out. I first decided to set up 6 curses with my Skarmory, then once again rest up, heal my sleep with a Chesto Berry again, and then use Fly to take out the Vileplume. The next Pokemon on his team was going to be a Whiscash, who we also just flied a couple of times, and the last Pokemon, Dodrio, also got destroyed by a fly. Yeah, that was that. Battle Frontier completed. Not the entire Battle Frontier, but the challenge I have set for myself, because we now have 1 golden medal. If I'm not mistaken, this is actually the first time I've ever gotten a golden medal in Emerald in all of my hours playing. Kind of insane to think about that. In the Battle Frontier, I also found another Aurora ticket so we could find ourselves our next mythical Pokemon Deoxys by chasing this triangle around for about 20 minutes. After adding the cool alien to our team, we then went underwater to capture some more Pokemon, including a Relicanth, which will be very important to capture even more legendaries, also known as the Reggie Trio. But before we do the Reggie Trio, I went back to capture a lot of Pokemon that I missed on some routes, and after doing so, I went back to the Pokemon League to grind all of those Pokemon up to their evolved forms. In the process of doing this, my Swampert also reached level 100, crossing off another thing of our big list, which means that we now just have to take on Steven, complete our Pokedex, and also find a shiny, which is not going to be easy because finding shiny Pokemon is totally up to luck. And since I had to do so much grinding, I managed to even get the double up on the level 100. I also got my Rayquaza to level 100, so does this technically give us double the points? Since we got 2 level 100 Pokemon, I don't think so. Still pretty cool that I managed to get 2 level 100s though. After getting all of my evolutions done, I went back to the Maniacs Tunnel because you could get all of the fossil Pokemon of Kanto here, and also the lost fossil of the desert, the Claw fossil. And we also managed to get a Ditto, which we are going to need to breed some baby Pokemon. Before we grind up and do all of that baby stuff, we have to take on the big boy Steven, because I wanted to cross off something off the list again. Since we have 2 level 100 Pokemon, this should absolutely be no problem. But we still couldn't do it with just 1 level 100 Swampert, as his Skarmory managed to poison me, which eventually killed me after I killed his Skarmory with Surf, his Aggron also with a Surf, and then ultimately I failed on his Cradily, so we had to bring in our other level 100 Rayquaza. Rayquaza then Earthquaked the Cradily to take it out. He also outraged the Claydol and Armaldo to take both of those out, and the final Pokemon on his team was his Metagross at level 78. But the only thing we just needed was 1 more Earthquake to defeat Steven's Stone and cross that of our list too. Since we're basically the ultimate trainer right now, we don't have that much to do anymore. Just find a shiny, complete the Pokedex, and we're done. But we don't have that many hours left. But since we're in Meteor Falls anyway, I decided to pick up a Bagon and also go fishing in the same room to find a Dratini and a Dragonair. After doing this, I went to a spot that I haven't been in before, and that's a Safari Zone. And there is an entire area dedicated to starter Pokemon where we can capture every single starter Pokemon, which normally indeed aren't available to us. After getting all of them, we then find another area with all of the Kanto legendaries and also the legendary beasts, so Suicune and a Raikou. These were definitely not easy for me to capture, but eventually after spending a lot of money on Safari Balls, we managed to complete all of the legendaries in this area too, which does mean that we only need the legendaries of Hoenn. So we go back to the Weather Institute to talk to the scientist guy, and he gives us coordinates to go and capture Groudon and Kyogre. I decide to go with our friendly neighborhood Red Godzilla first, since he's the first one you have to capture and you don't really have a choice, but he's also my favorite. Just like Rayquaza stopped them from battling a couple of hours ago, this time Rayquaza is going to help me with capturing them. With a lot of Ultra Balls, we managed to capture Groudon, and before we got Kyogre, I decided to add a Wailord and a Relicanth to my team, and for some very cultured people out there, they know what's going to happen next. we go and dive to a really weird spot. And after talking to a wall with some weird signs on it, we hear a door open in the distance. This means that it's time for us to go and capture the legendary Reggie trio. I once again started off with my favorite one, Regice, and just captured him with Ultra Balls. We then captured Regirock, and finally Registeel. With the Reggie trio out of the way, we find ourselves deep beneath the ocean, and we find the sea basin Pokemon Kyogre, aka the oversized aquarium fish. After lobbing a lot more balls at it, we also can add him to the team, which means that we only need one more mythical Pokemon in order for us to have all the mythical and legendary Pokemon. But before we get Jirachi, I went and did some rock smashing in order to get a nose pass, since this was the only way to get him. We also managed to find Latios when we were surfing somewhere on the water, but this footage sadly enough got corrupted, but with our Master Ball we easily captured him. And in the recording that corrupted where we got Latios, we also got Jirachi. So that's two Pokemon that got corrupted. But I'm going to tell you where to find Jirachi. It's just a simple trade for a Salamence in the Battle Frontier with this lady here, so not too hard to get. And then went to do one more trade, a Horsey for this guy's Snorlax, which is a pretty good trade if you ask me. And with this final trade out of the way, we just went to the Pokemon League, leveled up all of our Pokemon, and got ourselves everything that we need to get the National Dex except for one Pokemon. A Hoothoot. Yeah, a freaking Hoothoot was our final Pokemon that we needed. So I just put my Noctowl that I already captured into the daycare with a Ditto, biked up and down a little bit, and got myself a Hoothoot. And that was just in time, 99 hours on the clock actually, and we have completed our Pokedex, 386 Pokemon acquired. I'll even show you all of the boxes right here. Every single Pokemon should be there except for like Salamence and a couple of ones that I had to trade away to get other trade Pokemon. But with everything in our boxes and Pokedex, we went to Professor Birch, he congratulates us, and what's our reward? A Totodile, a Cyndaquil, or a Chikorita, which we already have. The worst reward ever, but I managed to do it. I completed my National Dex with 1 hour remaining. And we have completed every single task on the list, except for one, and that's find a shiny Pokemon. So I went to the Battle Frontier to go to the Battle Pyramid. I think it would be hilarious if we could find a shiny Pokemon in the Battle Pyramid and not actually capture it. But sadly enough, with only 1 hour remaining, I was not able to do this, and as you can see from my final save, 100 hours and 8 minutes, just disregard those 8 minutes, I didn't really do anything with those. And that's our 100 hours of Pokemon Emerald done. Would I say this was a success? Definitely. I have completed my first Pokedex in Pokemon ever. I've actually never completed a Pokedex before, so I'm pretty proud of that. Sadly enough, it's not in the real Emerald, it's in a ROM hack, but still a pretty proud achievement. Again, if you would want me to do this in a different game, let me know in the comments down below. I think it's going to be very hard to do this in any game that's further than this, because I'm going to be needing a lot more than 386 Pokemon, which I don't know if I'll be able to achieve that, but hey, we can try. Also, please let me know any feedback in the comments down below, what you would want me to do differently, because this is the first time I ever do this, and it was kind of an experiment. I also hope you guys had an amazing Christmas. This video was a little bit late because 100 hours took me quite a long time to do, but this is also going to be the final video of the year, so I had to end it with a banger. And I hope you guys also have an amazing New Year's. Hopefully all your wishes will come true. Let me know what all of your New Year's resolutions are in the comments down below. And as always, people, I want to thank my membership and Patreon supporters for supporting the channel. If you want to do so yourself, you can click the links in the description. It is always appreciated but not needed. And with that out of the way, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm Zwiggo, and I'll see you guys next year.